Hello and welcome to another edition of Soccer to the Max. And sorry if you were watching on you wanted to watch us on YouTube for the return edition. We learned our hard lesson that we cannot use highlights for the show at all, as it got blocked by every single one of the providers, basically, of those highlights. So now you know if you were watching on Twitch last week. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to just look at us, look at our faces, probably a little bit more than you want to. But hey, you know what? Unfortunately, like gaming is pretty much like the only thing that apparently you could do that for. Everything else is so picky about that kind of thing. But it is what it is. Technically, not our content, so you can't use it. But I think and you may also notice that Rachel is not with us right now. She's recording another podcast that she has. So hopefully she's looking to change those days so we can have the triumvirate here every week. But Erik, as you can see on video, or if you're listening on audio, Erik Watkins is here with me.
Yeah, well, at least I can say that I now have more than one video that's been taken down off of YouTube. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe should I push for a hat trick with something else? Should I tempt fate? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess you could just play NFL highlights on the kickoff, see how far that gets you there.
I'm tempted. I'm just saying.
You never know. Maybe it'll go through. Nobody will just will notice at all that is the thing. So this week it's a little bit more off the pitch stuff that we're going to talk about as far as our topics and headlines, because man, it feels like there was a lot of things happening that the Navy shouldn't be having, or some question marks now that are being brought up by different leagues going on. So without further delay, let's get into our headlines here. And to start off, we got to start with the drama that happened in Nice with Marseille and Nice. Of course, Marseille is my French league team, so I try to pay as much attention as I can. Unfortunately, because they are on BN Sport, can't watch them here live, but try to watch at least the highlights of the game and everything. And the highlights were very much taken over by what happened in the 75th minute, as basically where Marseille's trying to go take a corner, and one of the players, Payet, is the one taking the corner. He gets a water bottle thrown at him by one of the ultras. He throws the water bottle back at the fan that threw it at him, and then another water bottle comes down, and then chaos ensues. You have other players coming over from Marseille to kind of help their fellow teammate Alvaro Gonzalez, and then Mateo Guendouzi, also. And then all of a sudden, just you see several ultras just come down onto the pitch from the stands. You have like there's even a picture in L'Equipe of one of the fans like kicking at Payet and everything. And several players after the match, because the match was ended up like they actually tried to restart it. The French league tried to demand that the game was restarted, and then Marseille didn't show up. Nice players came out. The referee had actually blown the whistle and everything. The Marseille players never came back out. And honestly, with how they probably felt that they were not going to be protected, and what if this happened again, right? What if one of the ultras just came down and did this again? And so they just didn't come out, and a forfeit was basically given to Marseille, and Nice were given a 3-0 victory, which that is not the best thing, because technically Nice was already winning. They were already winning 1-0. So did you really need to add on more to that? And then also just it's crazy that even Nice players had to go and kind of fight with the fans as well to kind of get them to calm down. And it was an absolute just ridiculous scene. Erik, I mean, I don't know if you've seen what has happened or anything.
I did hear about that, especially the forfeit, and reading everything and seeing a couple of highlights, I immediately thought about a video that I saw flashing back to the Malice at the Palace,
Yeah,
the NBA game between the Pistons and Pacers over 15 years ago.
yeah. I think
And
2003, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
2003, 2004, thereabouts. But with those images and reading everything about the Ultras, I get how the players handled it, but I really think Ligue, FFF, they made a mistake. I mean, yes, there was still a good 15 minutes or so left in the match, but it's something like that. If you played that much of the match, you can go ahead and let the results stand.
yeah. And
There's
it's
no
crazy
real need
because the
for it.
referee had already decided to abandon the match. He had
Exactly.
made the
So
decision. So it's like, why did you have to come and overrule the referee and make that decision and say, okay, well, just because we have a new provider with Amazon and everything else, and now we have to start this matchup again. It's like
and
that.
that makes you look even worse because it should be about player safety. If you've got
Exactly.
ultras that wild up and where they're throwing things, and their own team has to go ahead and calm them down, what is the point of trying to restart the match? None.
Yeah, I mean, it
These
doesn't
players could get
help.
hurt. Marseille players could
Yeah,
have got hurt.
and
That
players
could
did
come
get
with.
hurt. I
Yeah.
don't know if you saw pictures. There was one of the players had like a big old. Looks like he had a slash on his neck. Another player had like bruising around his neck, and Payet also had scratches on his back. I mean, it's stuff that honestly you just doesn't need to be happening in sports in a
No.
game, regardless. I mean, but I feel like Nice, went on and blamed Marseille. Marseille blamed Nice. Nobody took authority of this, and nobody really went and tried to blame the fans either. Like,
No, the fans are going ahead starting stuff.
It doesn't matter if the player went and threw a water bottle at you. You threw it at him first, and then you threw him at him again. And it's not like he did the Artest thing, which is ridiculous, right? Artest went and into the stands and attacked
Yeah.
the guy physically. This is different. Like, you could have just left it at, okay, he threw something at me, whatever, and you can yell whatever you want. But once you start getting physical and you start coming onto the pitch, which is the players' ground, this is the players, where they're playing, they're putting their bodies on the line, they're, they're being paid to entertain you, and you're coming onto their playground. All bets are off at that point, and it's like, I get it. Security can't hold that many people at once. I mean, obviously that was inevitable, but it's just like at some point somebody needs to go and say, you know what, Nice, your next game is behind closed doors,
Absolutely.
right? Or
Absolutely.
just like what happens with Mexico with a freaking chant,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we've got to the point where they haven't got to the point where they've abandoned the match, but they've had situations where they've had to do warnings and all that stuff.
Yeah, they've
Like,
come close. A couple times
exactly.
they've come close.
Like, and this is over now. Obviously, it's a big deal. It's a homophobic chant. It shouldn't be done. And it seems like the fans are starting to get it, right? Because guess what happens? Mexico now has to play World Cup qualifiers for a while without fans.
Yeah, I
This is
believe
what,
it's their first two
yeah, the
qualifiers
first
behind closed
two,
doors.
which we're going to talk about, those World Cup qualifiers in a little bit. That makes a big difference for Mexico at Azteca having those fans. I mean, Azteca's you already have the altitude that's a problem, and then you add in those fans, that's a bigger deal. I mean, obviously all the CONCACAF teams are kind of used to it, but it's a different atmosphere at Azteca without those fans. So, like, I get it. Ultras can be like some of your best fans. They're the ones that lead the chants, or the ones that really get everybody kind of riled up in a good way. But this shows the bad side of
It
that.
really does. And there's an old saying, Coach Krzyzewski at Duke. You have a fire. You can use the fire to heat your building, or you can use it to burn the building down. It goes one of two ways. If you go ahead and you say, hey, all right, let's go, let's get this, pump up the crowd so you have that extra energy the players can feed off of, that's one thing. But if you have this to where you get so rabid that it's like, okay, you feel the need to really put this into your own hands in the worst way, there's got to be major consequences.
Yeah, I mean, it just it like look, I get it. Like, I think you should. I think someone who does deserve the blame on the Marseille side is Jorge Sampaoli, because instead of being the coach that kind of starts shielding your players and telling them, "Hey, go off, go to the changing room," all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff, like he gets into it. He starts yelling and screaming and acting like a little kid and jumping up and down, and like, you are the coach, you're the manager, act like it. I get it that you want to show your players that you're defending them, but they totally get it. At some point, they all get it. Like, they got why the Nice players had to start shielding them and telling them to back off and everything.
Yeah.
Because if you keep going against the fan, they're going to get more riled up and it's going to be worse. Like, as much as you want to say, okay, the fans shouldn't do that, the fans, don't need to get involved, and they don't. They need to not act like animals. They need to not act like children. Like, act like an adult. Understand that's another adult, another human on the other side. You, the player, at some point, you got to kind of take the high road and just say, listen, that's it. We're out of here. Now, if they keep being an aggressor at some point, you got to defend yourself. But, like, the coach should be the first one trying to get the players off the pitch, right?
Yeah,
and that's not what he was doing. And then he goes and gets a backpack and acts like he's going to leave. And it's like, what? What are you doing? Like, you're not acting like a manager at that point. And I get it. Part of that is also because they were losing at that point. So, he was trying to make a little bit of a statement. But it's just like,
it's the wrong way to make a statement in that instance.
Yeah, and giving Nice a forfeiture victory was not the way to handle that. That gives the fans a sort of a cop-out. Like, oh, we could do that again because our team's going to get a victory out of this. That is the wrong message. End the match. It's postponed. It doesn't, if you don't want to give Marseille a victory because they were down, that's fine. But you count it as no gain. And you either decide whether you're going to replay the match again, you're going to replay the match from the 75th minute later, or you're just going to, it's postponed and you just act like you don't have that match. Like you have one less game against the others. Right?
Yeah, and at this point, with this being so early in the season, there are dates to where you could make that game up.
Yeah, it's the decision to just give the game to Nice that bothers me, because it doesn't help what happened. It makes what happened almost seem like we're going to give that team a gift. I get it that Nice also can't go out and control all those fans at the same time, but they're your fans.
And what does also, not only this message for fans of Nice, what about some of these other teams?
Right.
What message does that send to them if they want to go ahead and try a stunt like this?
Yeah, exactly. We don't. I mean, there's ultras everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And all it takes is something like that. And hopefully this is an isolated incident. I mean, this is now the second time this season has already happened in Marseille where they had to have stoppage of a game. And this one went full tilt, and it's terrible that this happened. But honestly, all bad marks from the French League wanting to start the game again, not agreeing with the players were not safe in that environment. That's 15 more minutes. Somebody could do something else. What if there's another corner in that same area and they do it again? That does not help anyone. They shouldn't have given the match to Nice. There should be reprimands for both squads at this point. And then you got to do something to have the fans understand you don't do this. Guess what? The next Nice game, behind closed doors, no fans at all. So y'all can understand that there are repercussions for this kind of thing.
Yeah, and not only, have the next match behind closed doors, single out those fans and say, some sort of version for so many months of banning orders.
Yeah, banning orders, or go and get them legally.
Mm-hmm.
That would have helped a lot in the Ron Artest situation, which didn't happen. Is go after that fan legally that threw the bottle or threw the beer or whatever. Like, it's like,
Absolutely.
there should be repercussions for doing something like that, because you did that to somebody on the street. There's legal repercussions, right?
Yeah.
So
that's assault.
That should be the same way when they're on that pitch right there. So for me, just bad marks all around on that front. Erik, the MLS All-Star Skills Challenge is actually happening right now. The All-Star game between Liga MX All-Stars and the MLS All-Stars happens tomorrow in Las Vegas. A lot of big-time players are not going to be playing in this game. Carlos Vela just got injured in the loss. In the game that just happened over the weekend. Chicharito's been hurt, and he's not going to be in that game. And I think Carlos Gil, who's an English international, is not going to be playing either. Gignac on the Mexican side is not going to be playing, which is one of their biggest stars that would be representing in that game. So quite a few of the big names that you were hoping to sell this thing on are not playing. Rodolfo Pizarro was then added today or yesterday to help with that. So, and I'm sure they will add in, I think Leggett was also added to add into that squad as well. So they're adding players in to that MLS roster to help. But honestly, I wonder if is this the way to go forward for MLS as far as that All-Star game goes? Like, do you feel like this is a way? There's been talk of, pushing it back to the East versus West thing and have it be an actual real All-Star game. I know, we used to have a big international team comes during their preseason basically and plays this game.
Yeah.
Where are you on that? Like, which one do you prefer?
Honestly, while with really the hyper expansion of the league these past several years, East-West would be something to revisit, get more familiarized with a lot of American names or big names with these MLS teams. I think, given the grand picture, it is the perfect thing to keep it as MLS Ligue MX, because you're doing this to really start planting the idea ahead of the United World Cup in 2026. You've already got all kinds of different cup competitions between the two leagues. To me, this is logical. You have exposure with both of these leagues as being some of the top ones here in the US and in Mexico. Yes, it is unfortunate for this first edition that you're going to have some big names out, but a lot of times that tends to be the case just about every year. So, while, it's a bit of bad timing, next year it'll end up being a different story, but it's less hassle as far as scheduling, really less hassle as far as travel or any sort of other logistics. Yeah, East-West would be even easier, but I think since you're saying MLS versus somebody, and that seems to have been the way for the longest time, this is the easiest.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I've liked this version better than an East-West, and I also like this version better than the international team coming. Because number one, yes, sometimes the international team does send a lot of their big players, but sometimes they don't. And you get like a B squad playing the MLS All-Stars. And then MLS tries to make it a big deal still about the fact that, they beat Real Madrid or they beat Juventus. Or
not to mention, even with a lot of those international teams, what was their approach? Pretty much wholesale changes and substitutions after halftime, because they're like,
even before
okay,
halftime sometimes.
Exactly, because it's all right. This is preseason. We need to get everybody minutes, figure out our starting 11 But for MLS, it's like, oh, this is our peak, this is our best, and it's like,
And then also it like goes better with the whole fact that it's an all-star game, right? Like MLS basically changes the entire team in halftime to let the other players play.
Yep.
And then the Liga MX team can do the same thing, get other players in there. Again, you're maybe not getting the best of the best Liga MX players either, but I mean a lot of the very much just like the U.S. men's national team, a lot of the Mexican national team players are now playing in Europe somewhere. So you're not going to see some of those players that maybe you see when Mexico plays someone or whatever, when Mexico plays with World Cup qualifiers. So, but even then, I think what is important is, like you said, it's more about we already have all these competitions from U.S. plays Mexico. The Liga MX plays MLS. Basically, the League's Cup is basically set up so that it's MLS versus Liga MX teams always at the end anyway. Like, so why just go ahead and stop with the. I mean, I get it. There's also a marketing thing here because some is the marketing for both Liga MX and on the English side and for MLS. So there's that as well. But going beyond just the whole marketing schema here, I just feel like I get it. I understand that most people will say, well, this is not broadening your horizons, right? This is not broadening the scope of MLS. I feel like we need to just be realistic at this point. There is no more broadening of MLS.
No.
MLS is not going to get that much broader.
No.
As more and more and more availability of European leagues in the United States exists with the great players that go to those leagues, especially the EPL. Serie A is on Paramount Plus now. La Liga is with ESPN now. Even though they don't have Messi anymore, it's still a huge get with still some major players there. I don't know if somebody will try to do more with BN now and make Liga available in more places so that you can watch Messi in the 2 years that he's going to be there. Not to mention, it feels like he is just going to be there for the 2 years and then go back to Barcelona. So eventually you may get him back in the Liga. Your rumor that you had brought up about Ronaldo seems like he's now they're talking about Manchester City, but that rumor of him joining Messi and PSG was also being floated around too. So that's interesting. What winds up happening before we get to this transfer window closing? Like, it's just like we're seeing more and more American fans be knowledgeable and understanding that there are other leagues out there, and the MLS players are being sold at a higher rate now to Bundesliga, to other leagues.
When you're talking about and going back to Don Garber's mission, we want to be a top 10 league. We've got a long ways to go. You really want to go ahead and broaden MLS? It's exactly what's happening now. We're developing a lot of talent. We're exposing that. And what do you know? You're starting to see more and more MLS players go to European top 5 leagues, have more and more steadily success in these leagues. This is what you want to happen. Yeah. Why go with anything and all this and that with these teams when you're getting these same players on TV all the time, all these other teams, and then we get that feedback, bring him back to the U.S. for U.S. national team. Look at how well that's going. So with something like this, I mean, Japan, they figured it out a long time ago. Their first division all-stars play the K-League all-stars from South Korea. You have these national rivalries. It kind of helps promote that too. The answer's just right there.
Yeah, and then, I mean, it also just, you still have some of this, like, Liga MX players going to MLS. Like, you have some of that rivalry as well. Like, Carlos Vela chose to go to LA instead of going to a Liga MX club. Like, so, I think it's something interesting, and it kind of furthers that. Yes, you're keeping things in CONCACAF. You're keeping things in North America. You're not broadening it to the other parts of the world. But let's be honest, man. Like the other parts of the world have their leagues that they love, and they're not gonna. You have. I mean, you might see them if one of their players goes over to MLS. If Messi or Ronaldo do eventually go to an MLS team, will
Which
there
is
be
another
more?
rumor that's starting to swirl around.
Right, but I definitely Messi, that could be in his 2-year stint. Could he go to an MLS team instead of going back to Barcelona? We'll see. But I'm just saying, like, we just gotta understand, players are gonna come when they feel like coming. Players that don't work out in Europe, the American players, and come back, that and then they come back to MLS and they do better. Okay, like Daryl DK, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the thing is, I think this is a good way right now. Maybe in 5 years we can talk about something else. Let's see what happens with this new TV deal. Who winds up with the rights and everything? What winds up happening with that? But I think right now, the way it is, we just kind of have to accept things the way they are.
Yeah.
Let's try to improve on the league is good. The league is good, but trying to shoehorn it in and make other people try to care about it is not going to make it better. Let's try to improve the national team.
Absolutely, because
and go that route.
Other continents are really doing the same thing that we are. They are becoming more and more insular. Yes, you could say the standard of play, level of talent, everything is better. I completely get that. But if you want to do the same thing, you want to step up to that level, well, you have to take care of things closer to home first.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be fun to watch this. I won't get to watch it live because of work, but something I can definitely watch on demand later and check it out. There's always some fun stuff, and it always kind of goes to the wire a lot of times. And
yeah,
let's see if there's some definitely broadening hours. But I think it's also good because, again, like Liga MX's players get to see the quality of the MLS players, and maybe it does eventually bring some of those Liga MX players to an MLS team. So definitely, I think this is all a good thing for the foreseeable future for them to keep doing this, especially like you said, with the World Cup in 2026 being a thing. So let's go into one of our topics here. After this weekend, we suddenly had, now should note that Liverpool beat Burnley 2-0, and also Manchester United maybe have a bigger gripe. They wound up drawing with Southampton in a game that they probably shouldn't have drawn. But honestly,
so much for my winning the league chant. Yeah.
Game, we'll see. But I definitely think like there's 2 points dropped there. But I think the 2 points drop that we're like alluding to was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and also Jurgen Klopp coming in and talking about afterwards about, I feel like the Premier League in this whole let it flow thing is not protecting the players. So I want to like read a little bit of what each manager had to say regarding this whole decision, right? Because this is coming after the Euros, where they kind of took this approach as well of, you need to let the players play. Don't call every single foul. Don't call everything that seems kind of objectionable. Don't involve VAR so much on the penalty decisions. Those kind of things. So this is what Solskjaer had to say. It seems as football has gone from one extreme to another. This is, of course, this has effects to them because Jack Stevens kind of runs into Bruno Fernandes, and then it starts the goal that winds up happening for Shea Adams. To me, you could call that a foul if you wanted to, but I also kind of agree with the no call as well. He's feeling like we should do this better. If you don't get a foul, you have to make sure you block the shot. Put your body in the line. He's saying, okay, he's putting it back on the players. But he's also kind of going, oh, well, we were basketball last season. Now we're rugby. There should be a more lenient interpretation. It's more like men's football, but that's a clear foul, So that doesn't end there. Jurgen Klopp kind of went further with this. He said, this has been a thing for a while. You might remember it started with elbow challenges in the air. So every elbow challenge was a whistle. Now they stopped doing that. No more soft penalties, which totally agree with, on that front. And then he, goes in and saying, look, we're already early in the season. I don't want to open Pandora's box, so we need to protect the players more. And I get it. They're protecting their players, all of this. But where do you land on this whole let it flow? Is it letting it flow too much? Or is this making the game better that we're not constantly having fouls called?
I do think it's making the game better. Now, especially after the Euros, the whole incident in extra time in the final between England and Italy. Yes, that was a clear foul. Yes, that should have been a red card. So the referees, you still have moments to where they miss things. But if you're not constantly breaking the game down, foul after foul, free kick, and every single thing becomes a set piece, then really what's the point of that? I don't think we've crossed the line just yet. I'm fine with this because, as is, the Premier League has been known as a tougher, more physical league. Yes, you do rely on a lot of speed at times, but you have to have that level of grit. To me, this just makes more sense. So, for something like this, and for them swallowing their whistle instead of calling all of those ticky-tack 50-50 fouls, I'm good with.
Yeah, I'm good with it too. And I'm glad to see that they're not stopping the entire game for 5 minutes to figure out a penalty decision either. It's not as quick as the Euros. I like that a lot more, where he was, doing this, holding his, and then letting the referee upstairs kind of make the call. We're still having a little bit too much of like, oh, this is taking too long. Now, they are going and making the decisions on, if this is a red card, is this is it a penalty or not? And we are seeing the referees still go and look at the camera themselves if they have to. But overall, I felt like it does flow much better. You're not seeing fouls called constantly. You're not seeing free kicks from miles away that are never going to go anywhere. It feels like, okay, there's more game going on here, and I really enjoy that. And I understand where Solskjaer and Klopp are coming from, right? Okay, I feel like we're not doing right by our players, all this stuff. Like, we're going too far in the other direction. There's not a middle ground here. And it's like, well, that's the problem. Like, how is there a middle ground if you have to go a little bit more the other way first to see? We're not talking about, somebody's coming in with a 2-footed challenge, taking out a guy, and then we keep going. We're talking about
you're still getting the proper fouls. You're still getting some yellow cards, red cards, and things that should be. It's just, okay, you can't entirely look at the letter of the law. Looking at the spirit of it, exercise a bit more judgment. And yes, sometimes these things are going to happen. Yes, as you get later and later into the season, some of these things could add up. I get it from their perspective too. But at the same time, would you rather, they take maybe one or two extra hits, maybe one or two precarious situations over a stretch, or You have to stand there and you're playing all these extra minutes of stoppage time, and that wears down, wears down, wears down.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like the handball situation, right?
Yeah.
It's still kind of the interpretation depending on that referee what they're going to do. Is this a handball? Is it? Oh, it went into the ground and then hit my arm. Is that a handball? Is he's turning around? You can obviously see he's trying not to. Well, some people are going to call that a handball, some are not. It's like some people are going to call that a foul, and some people are not. Is that foul on Bruno a foul? To some people, it might be. To some people, it's not. He went and got the ball, and he kind of ran into the player too. I mean, you could have called it.
Yeah.
Right? He could have called it. He didn't. But I'll get into. Well, I kind of skipped it. That's one of the games I watched. I'm gonna tell you right now, that is not the reason why Man United lost that game. They lost that game from the get-go in who was selected, and I get it, right? It's early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
They have way too many players on the books that are still starting caliber players.
Yeah.
And you gotta satisfy them at some point. You can't put everybody in to play the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup and call it a day. They've got to play in some league matches too. I get it, Mod. It still has to play, right? But honestly, you have so much attacking talent at this point. Do you got to play the two holding midfielders still? I don't understand why that is the thing with Solskjaer. He's got to play that every single match. That's his thing.
The whole transition was with getting players like Sancho and Varane. It's like, all right, we're going to switch away from the 4-2-3-1. We're going to go to more 4-3-3. I was looking forward to that. I'm thinking, all right, a little bit more flair, things going up front. You have what you wanted as your ideal midfield pairing. What was there the problem? But maybe he's just being stubborn. Maybe there was something to where the 4-3-3 isn't ready yet. I don't know. But I'm with you. It's like you did this to where you were going to change things. You've had all this time to adjust and change things. Why haven't you started?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like. Now, granted, I mean they put up a fight against Everton. They're regardless of whether Southampton's been gutted or not, as far as their bigger players that they've had in the past are concerned. They're still a scrappy team. They still fight. I get that, but it's like this was a team. We're not talking about Leeds kind of played into their hands the way that Leeds plays, but it's like this was the time to tinker a little bit, figure out something different, and see if it works. I get it. Maybe you don't want to start Sancho because you feel like, okay, I don't want to give him the whole 90 minutes still. He's still coming back from playing with England. All that.
Yeah.
Varane, obviously, they don't feel like he's ready. So they didn't start him in the back line. And it's weird because you don't start Varane, and that's when Maguire has a really bad game. And which is weird for him because that's not normal for him. But he was one of the reasons why beat by either Adams or Armstrong in that the center of the park there.
Okay, we had a little bit of technical difficulties going on there, but I mean, you're absolutely right. There was some sort of shambles really going on, and I kind of got the feeling a little bit because of Pogba's just wizardry against the Leeds, and now he's got already his 5th assist of the season, assisting on the equalizer. You don't want to get into that pattern of, okay, you could say shop window or whatever, or contract situation or whatever. Yes, he is very talismanic, but you don't want that to always be the focal point and relying on him to make some big move to just bail you out. It's early, but I don't want to get that going.
I mean, like I don't want to keep harping on this. They still played well. They had
Hmm.
most of the possession in the game. They were really kind of bossing that game, if you want to use that term.
Yeah.
Pogba, I thought, still played well. They had chances. I still think Greenwood is much better up front than in the midfield. That's something Solskjaer has to figure out. I don't know that Martial really fits this team anymore, honestly. Maybe he's somebody that you have to have when somebody's injured or someone just needs a day off. Doesn't fit the rest of this team. Like Bruno, Pogba, Rashford, now Greenwood, they all kind of have that similar style of being speedy, like getting
Yeah.
up there, taking.
And I mean, with something like this, and you're making these changes, yes, fixture congestion is going to be a thing as you get deeper into the season. So, yes, you would want to keep players like Martial around, especially if you've got, your midweek Champions League matches, or as you're getting, if you get deeper into the cup, that's fine. But you don't necessarily have to worry about that. You want to put your best foot forward in the league while it is the main thing you've got going on. And it's a little bit like outthinking the room. Yes, you're looking ahead, but don't look too far.
So, going ahead, I watched the highlights of this. I didn't watch the whole
Hmm.
game. From the highlights, I mean, there was a lot going on that Cali Clasico.
I mean, now the first half, it was kind of hit or miss, but the second half, I don't know what it was with San Jose, just continuing, flooding the attacking third, pushing. Jonathan Bond, two, three, four tremendous saves, almost at some point flopping around like a fish, keeping the ball out of the net for the longest time. But it came down, incredible plays off corners. San Jose got that late equalizer after, to put it mildly, there was specific interests that I may have had with the draw being the optimal result, leaving it at that. But in the end, San Jose just had that one last push, and while LA, the last 5-10 minutes, had great chances to win, the Earthquakes defense just locked down.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think LA had won the first two already, and
Mm-hmm.
San Jose had been on a great run of form. They're now at 10 unbeaten, a 10-game run unbeaten. So, I mean, from what I have been able to see, San Jose looked really good in that game, and
They
both those
did.
goals were fun as well. So, like, I think for being a Cali Clasico, that's what you want. You want those Clasico games to be, uh, you know, down to the wire. I had that same thing with FC Dallas and Houston as well. Like FC Dallas had to get the two goals on coming back to make the game a draw, and Ricardo Pepi again scoring, who's been absolutely awesome this year already for them. So I I'm just glad that they had lost two games. That one against Seattle that really hurt because they had been able to keep the game 0-0 for so long and then lose right then. Then to come back and at least get a point was good because you got to keep yourself in that playoff race there to try to fight for seventh or sixth. And Houston's down at the bottom now after that point as well, which is crazy considering who's been at the bottom for most of that month or that this season, and now they get to play Austin next week, so that's
Oof.
going to be fun. The other Texas derby so far. So moving on to our last of the topics here, and it's one that was kind of a decision that was made today, as we're talking here, was made earlier today of at least for the English Premier League. And I think La Liga has already stated that they're kind of in agreement with this. I don't know where the other big leagues are at this time with this, but English Premier League has, due to COVID reasons, with whoever the UK has on their red list, which right now is a lot of countries in South America, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and then you go over to Asia, Africa as well, are on that list. Mohamed Salah cannot go play for Egypt during these World Cup qualifiers right now. So Richarlison, Rafinha, all these other Brazilian players that are in the EPL cannot be released to their squads to play for World Cup qualifying. Same thing with the Argentinian players. The same thing would be for, I guess, the Paraguayan players in La Liga. There are a lot of those right now. So, man, and they're coming out and saying that basically FIFA overstepped their bounds. That FIFA should have taken this into account before making this ruling, which technically is always the standard ruling for FIFA of you have to release your players for World Cup qualifiers or European Cup qualifiers or whatever, Do you feel like this shouldn't matter? Rules here? Quarantine, no quarantine? Where do you stand on this?
I mean, personally, it's going to sound a little bit callous, and you're going to be taking away from the international game a little bit. I'm siding with the leagues, and Mo Salah is a perfect example because he goes ahead, he plays the Egypt in World Cup qualifying. He comes back. By UK rules, he's got to quarantine for like 14 days.
10 days.
Or 10 days. He's going to miss 2 Premier League matches. And even though it's early in the season, this is going to happen again as you get more international breaks going on. Those matches could end up very, very important. Not to mention, for as much as you have the glory for international tournaments for your country, I completely get that. Your clubs are the ones signing the big checks. Your clubs are the ones paying the bigger money and reaping all those benefits. So really the clubs looking after their players and their investments, I understand that. Now, with the nature of everything going on, very fluid, and as the months come, things change, I entirely get it. But the way things stand right now, I'm with the leagues. They've got their interests. They've got to protect themselves, especially if anything happens when a player comes back, and then they have issues to where they've got league or matches postponed, canceled, etc. Then what? You don't really want to start that snowball rolling.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not only protecting the player, it's protecting the entire squad. Right? Because then you have a COVID outbreak in the squad. We saw what happened to Bayern to start the season. They had to play that first game with a lot of their players because of COVID rules. Christian Pulisic is now, COVID positive, so he may not be able to play for the U.S. men's national team. So like that's the thing is like for me, you've got to let. I'm also with you on that. As much as an international fan.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we have these, and especially right now, gearing up towards Qatar, it doesn't really make much sense because for all those like us who are gearing up towards World Cup qualifiers and all these different things, a lot of people are more excited about seeing the players for their clubs and for Champions League and things like that, which especially if things change even within these other countries, that's something that you would have to worry about as the months come up. So
yeah, I mean, this is only probably going to get worse as we get to like holiday season with more people being inside and you get into colder months and a lot of not just the United States, but in other area, in other, especially Europe and all of that. So Whereas you feel like it's being hit hard in the United States here, it may hit harder in Europe again. So,
Absolutely.
like, that's the thing. This is not going to just be, this is not just a September thing. This is an October thing. It's a November thing. It's going to keep on throughout this year. As much as, we don't want to talk about it and we want to be happy about, oh my God, look at all these stands, look at the stands, and
Yeah.
especially the EPL, how full they are. Oh my God, how great. That's not necessarily the case when you look at Germany, when you look at Spain, when you look at Italy, but still, it's like having the fans back is great, right? You still also got to think about, even though those international games are not going to be as great, you're not going to have the star power for a lot of those, especially I feel so bad for the South American teams, and because those are your big players, right? This
Mm-hmm.
affects you, could help those countries that don't maybe have the bigger name players. And all their players play locally, or all their players play in other leagues that are not the EPL or Spain or Italy or whatever. Like, it could help them get points, and especially in South American qualifying, that can make a big difference, right? Or Asian and African qualifying, those things can make a difference because African and especially African, they have those groups that they have
Yeah.
to get out of first before they get into like the table, right? So like even at, let's say, if the U.S. was part of that, right? Well, which the U.S. has to travel for
Mm-hmm.
two of those games to El Salvador, and do they have to travel for Honduras as well?
Yeah. San Pedro
Okay,
Sula. Yeah.
so yeah, to El Salvador, Honduras. If they were on that red list, and let's say Pulisic and uh, you know Gio Reyna can't appear for the U.S. because of that, like, you got to think about, this is not like a case of, when a player doesn't let them call up a player, right? This is for the protection of not only the player but the entire squad, and not having repercussions happen further, like you were saying, than just this. And I think FIFA needs to understand that as well, and they need to make modifications for that. Um, and it's interesting because we still have at least a week before this all comes down. We could see
Mm-hmm.
more and more of those leagues do the same thing, and
Yeah.
then it's really a bit, it's really up to FIFA. What do we do in this instance for this?
Yeah, because it's something that, as unfortunate as it is, it's going to be lingering throughout this entire season,
Yeah,
going into 2022. And then hopefully, as we progress through 2022, as you get closer to the World Cup in Qatar,
yeah,
things improve. But for now, you have to be able to adjust and adapt on the fly. And also, real quick, haven't gotten a chance to do this. Dan, we see your comment there. Absolutely. I mean, harkening back to what we were saying with the referees calling fouls in the Premier League, yeah, just like how you study tendencies of players, you study tendencies of referees, fouls, average number of cards, etc. That comes into play as well. So, he definitely understandable. He's got the right idea.
yeah. I definitely agree with him there. I think it's a different perspective than what we were talking about. We're not trying to say the referees are making bad calls
No, not at
over and
all.
over or anything.
Just
It's just, I get it. I totally understand on that point. Like, we see that a lot in the NBA. We'll have referees get reprimanded because they're making bad decisions
right.
consistently, or whatever. So, but going on to looking at our supporters club, looking at our clubs here, and for me, I just happened that we just already happen to have talked about several of my clubs already, so I don't have to belabor the point again. But I think for at least another team that surprised me is Dortmund. They looked they got owned by Freiburg in several instances in this game. Holland didn't get the service that he got in in the first game. We saw some of that petulance in the Super Cup, where Bayern just had moments where they were absolutely clobbering them, and this is going to be a problem for Dortmund They look great in attack, but they are so vulnerable at the back.
And you said, even though, yeah, Bayern got held to 1, you pointed out that could have been 5 or 6. And that back forward, that's got to be a problem that has to be addressed as soon as possible.
No, it definitely does need to be addressed. It's something that they've got to look at going forward. So like for me, I think one of the big things is Dortmund's got to correct that. You got to figure out who you want to play in the midfield, and whether I think maybe you need to start playing Haaland up front by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing if that works, because I think they keep trying to figure out. They've played 2 different players next to him. It doesn't necessarily, neither one have necessarily worked. I think it's better to just maybe just have an extra person in midfield to just give him service to score, and then if you get a rebound or whatever, or you're having the fullbacks overlap or whatnot, it's just that's one of their problems. Is if you're not going to be able to defend at the back, you're going to have to score more, like we saw in the first game. You're going to have to start blowing teams out or keeping up the pace, and you're not doing that if you're not being able to get it to Haaland for him to have the chances.
Not at all. Not at all.
America keeps winning. They beat Tijuana as well. They are I think they have at least 6 or 7 where they haven't been beaten. So this is going to be interesting going into this next match here for them with Leon, which is a bigger threat on the 28th there. So yeah, this next game against Leon is going to be very interesting to really be able to tell you where America is. But right now they're 5-1. They're number 1 in Liga MX so far, doing pretty well as far as that goes. I talked about FC Dallas. I talked about Man United as well. United have another interesting fixture with Wolves, who just come off losing against their old manager at Spurs. So let's see what kind of Wolves squad you're going to get. Raul Jimenez had some decent opportunities, but man, Traore needs to figure out how to actually, score in front of goal, because that's their biggest problem. Traore in the first 2 matches has had opportunities in front of goal with just the keeper, and he cannot put it in for Wolves. I mean, I think you got to figure out something.
Well, I mean, that's not the first guy who's had those sorts of problems in front of goal. It's always the one every season.
Yeah, definitely. And Valencia, once again, man, just they had some chances, but Granada really had their number in that game. They scored early. They really defended well. Valencia got a cheap penalty. I mean, it's a penalty, but damn, in the 88th minute, they get a penalty to be able to draw. So both their games, which are a win and a draw, the goals come from penalties. So far right now, you're not looking very good as far as creating chances and then also putting the ball in the net. Right now, you're having to rely on the referee and some calls to get points. This is not looking good. I mean, yes, new manager and all that. And this is actually their manager's going up against his old club here. But Luis Suarez on that counterattacking goal, splendid goal on Granada's end. But man, Valencia just have not looked good in these first 2 matches. And, now they have to go against Alaves, who gave Real Madrid one heck of a game this past week. Man, that was a thriller of a game. If you have ESPN Plus, definitely go check out highlights or go check out that game. That was a fun game to watch. So very interesting what will happen on Friday for Valencia against Alaves on that one. Yeah, and Marseille, let's see what happens with them bouncing back from that whole drama that happened to them. But the interesting one was AC Milan, who started the Serie A started this week, and they scored early with Brahim Diaz, who was loaned out from Real Madrid. He's now going to be there for 2 seasons after being there last year as well. So that's good for Milan. But no Zlatan in this. They were missing some players. they still look decent. Giroud had some chances late and everything to try to, lengthen the lead. But Sampdoria looked really good too. So this was interesting for Milan, but they squeaked by at the 1-0 in the first game. So good for Milan. But man, when you look at the champions Inter, who absolutely blasted in their first game, Juventus thought they were going to win after all the controversy with Ronaldo. He puts in the goal at the end, and then he gets called back from VAR. So then what's funny is he still has to deal with that yellow card he gets for taking off his shirt, which is funny. Which is funny too. Like, why? If you didn't allow the goal, then why does he have to deal with that?
Well, I mean, you take off your shirt thinking you scored a big moment, but it's just like, whoops. That's why you see.
Yeah, but if the goal got taken away and that's why he was celebrating, you should take away the yellow card as well, right?
I'm with you on that one. Like you have celebrations, they have to be called away all the time. I don't get it.
So, I mean, looking at how do you feel about your clubs going forward? I mean, Atlanta has been on fire recently with their new coach, and they went in and beat DC United.
Yeah, I wasn't terribly disappointed because I know Atlanta's back. I mean, you got Joseph Martinez. And
they have Gonzalo Pineda is going to be their new manager starting next week. So
exactly. So we had a very solid effort, but I mean, when you've got a team like that who's got everything firing on all cylinders, you're really unlucky. So I'm not going to take that away from them. They didn't get blown out. Take the All-Star break, reassess a little bit. You're still above the red line in playoff position. I'm giving them a pass for that one. And then to kind of ease things with Orlando City, they got a beautiful late winner. Times are good. I'm still saying, keep this train going. We're just about in September. I don't want to say a lot of stuff yet because I know what happened in the playoffs last year, but I'm still feeling some mojo. And I almost never feel mojo, especially at this time of year.
Well, that's good that you're feeling it for both your clubs. Like, I'm just hoping Dallas just get some victories here, get you further up, closer to that red line, and not further back. I mean, they did have a long way to climb, but I mean, Austin, even though they looked good in their game this week after they had some rough games as well, let's beat the other Texas team and get that out of there.
Start with their Lone Star supremacy first and build off of that.
Yeah, exactly. Let's build off of that. So, any other squad or anything else you want to talk about here before we?
Something interesting that I've been looking at. I'm just going to put this bluntly. Why do we suck at beach soccer? I mean, you have the Beach Soccer World Cup going on right now over in Russia, of all places, which I didn't think that could be a thing, but it is. I've seen a couple of the U.S. matches against the Russian Football Union, a 5-4 extra time loss. Against Japan, another close loss.
At least they're close.
They're close, but at the same time, going into this, I believe out of 15 matches, we've only won 3 at that tournament. And we've never made it out of the group stage. So we're like, oh, well, if they don't make it out of the group stage this year, at least they have something to hang on to and all this progress. And I'm like, what? Nobody sees a problem with this? I do.
Yeah.
Something that boggles my mind.
Yeah, last in the group with Japan, Paraguay, and Russia. So not great. I mean, but like, if you look at, why did they have this set up this way? Terrible people website here. Like, look at some of the leaders in some of the other groups, right? Like Tahiti is up there with Spain. Like, Tahiti does nothing. I mean, they have to even qualify for the Oceania side of it. I mean, like, So
but they have beaches. That to me is legit, though.
right, but we have beaches. We have beaches too, but it doesn't mean that we're like should be a
But this is
powerhouse of
exactly
beach
my
soccer.
point.
I mean,
This is my point. If Tahiti can be good at it, if Brazil, who invented the sport, can
yeah.
dominate at it, what are we doing wrong?
Well, because we're not a world power in soccer generally. So like you're looking at beach soccer, which is even hard. I feel like it's even harder because you got to like really push that ball to get through the sand and all that. Like it's not easy to. You really
It's
got to have
intense.
skill. That's why I mean, look at Russia. Also, it's. I mean, you don't really think about Russia as this. I mean, it's a really good European side, but they're not like this extreme soccer powerhouse. I mean, like if you look at almost everybody else at with Tahiti being an exception, like okay, Switzerland, Brazil. They're the number one in that group. I mean, Switzerland being ahead of Brazil is kind of surprising with beach soccer. But like, Senegal has been one of the African teams that has made a rise. Portugal as well. Uruguay. Like, of course, Uruguay has always been a soccer powerhouse. Like, so it's sort of the ones you would expect. I mean, like, look, Mexico doesn't even make it in the beach soccer World Cup, and the U.S. did. So that's something, right? Like, at least you made it to the tournament. It doesn't always, I don't know why we suck necessarily, but I mean, look at the ones that have done well and the ones that are doing well. It's the usual, some usual suspects there. So
Yeah, and I get that. And I mean, with crazy ones like you'd say, like Switzerland and everything, I've seen some beach soccer tournaments throughout Europe, and even the stadium that they built for beach soccer, which is also they use it for like beach volleyball and stuff. Great. They go ahead and they invest in these things and they make surprises. We can throw a little bit into that too. I mean, it's not that hard for someone like us.
no, but I mean, at the like only you and I and some of the hardcore people even know if there's a beach soccer World Cup at all. So like,
Fair.
hey, I think we need to like temper those expectations. I mean, just think about it on a scale worldwide, like Spain, Brazil. Look at all the players that they just have come out of the woodwork everywhere to be able to, be in a soccer tournament. There's soccer countries. Uruguay is a soccer country. Switzerland, all that. So like, you still should look at it as if you have a surplus of talent, that's going to extend to beach soccer as well when it comes to the soccer landscape. So it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise that Brazil is the one that's won the most of these World Cups or whatever. So yeah,
I get that. I'm just like, I'm not saying we have to go out there and be full on contenders and make finals or bust or anything like that. But would it kill us to make a knockout stage every once in a while?
no, but yeah. Hey, at least we made it there. That's what matters. So I think that's going to be it for us here. Thank you for joining us. If you watched this on video, if you're going to listen later on the podcast side, I appreciate that as well. Thank you for listening on the first episode back. That was nice of you as well. And you can, if you're just starting to listen this week, we're available on all the podcast services that are available out there, and we'll be back next week. With Rachel, hopefully. And hopefully you, again, let us know whether it's by email, w2network@gmail.com, whether it's hitting me up on Twitter at WTMSean, at Squid Sportshead, for Erik, at Rachel Krieger for Rachel, to let us know if you like the format, where we're not really breaking down games, stuff like that. We're kind of talking about topics and things broadly. But, until next week, see y'all later, everybody.
Peace.
Later.